The border guard shoved Kerra hard enough that she stumbled forward, nearly dropping the bundle of her few possessions. And when she turned back to plead one more time, the iron gate had already slammed shut with a finality that echoed through her chest like a death knell. She stood there in the mud between two nations, neither of which wanted her, with rain beginning to fall in cold sheets that plastered her dark hair against her green skin. Behind her lay the Orcish territories, where her clan had cast her out for the unforgivable crime of showing mercy to a human child who had wandered too close to their hunting grounds. Ahead lay the human kingdom of Aldermere, whose soldiers had just refused her entry because, as the captain had sneered, they had no use for orc filth seeking to cross their sacred borders. The neutral zone stretched perhaps 50 yards in either direction, a strip of worthless land that both sides had agreed upon decades ago when the last war ended. Kerra knew the stories well enough. Anyone caught lingering here too long would be shot by archers from either side, considered a threat to both. She had perhaps an hour before full darkness fell, and then she would be nothing more than a target in the night. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cold seep through her worn leather vest and the thin shirt beneath. At 23 summers, she had never imagined dying alone in the mud between worlds, but the universe seemed to have little concern for what she had imagined. Her tusks ached in the cold, a small detail that made her want to laugh bitterly. Of all the things to notice in her final hour, why did it have to be that? Movement caught her eye to the west, along the human side of the border. A figure approached the fence line, walking with the steady gait of someone who knew this land intimately. Kerra's first instinct was to run, but there was nowhere to go. Instead, she stood her ground, chin lifted despite the fear coursing through her veins. The man stopped at the fence, perhaps 20 yards from where the guards had rejected her. He was human, clearly, with sun-weathered skin that spoke of years working outdoors and dark brown hair that hung slightly too long around his ears. He wore simple farmer's clothes, sturdy and practical, and he carried no visible weapons. For a long moment he simply looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he raised his hand and gestured, a clear wave that meant come here. Kerra's breath caught. She glanced back at the Orcish gate, still firmly closed, then at the guard post on the human side where the captain had rejected her. The soldiers there were watching, but they had retreated inside their shelter against the rain. The farmer gestured again, more insistently. She walked toward him, her boots squelching in the mud, half convinced this was some cruel trick. When she got close enough to see his face clearly, she stopped, waiting for the other boot to drop. "You have been standing out here for near an hour," he said. His voice was deep and calm with the accent of the northern provinces. "The patrols change at sundown. When the new guards come, they will likely shoot you on principle." "I have nowhere else to go," Kerra said, hating how her voice shook. "Your people will not let me cross. My people cast me out. This strip of mud is all I have left." The man studied her for another moment, then looked around carefully. "There is a section of fence about 100 yards that way," he pointed west, "where the posts have rotted through at the base. If someone were to push on it just right, it would fall inward. And if that someone were to be quick about crossing, and if they were to follow the irrigation ditch that runs behind my property, they could reach my barn without being seen from the guard post." Kerra stared at him. "Why would you tell me this?" "Because I have spent enough of my life watching people die needlessly," he said simply. "Whether you cross or not is your choice. But if you do, and if you make it to the barn, there is warm hay and shelter from the rain. We can talk more then when you are not in immediate danger of being shot." He turned and started walking away, back toward the farmland that spread out behind him. Kerra watched him go, her mind reeling. This could still be a trap. He could be leading her to guards waiting on the other side, ready to arrest or kill her the moment she crossed. But the alternative was certain death in the neutral zone. She hurried west along the fence line, counting her steps, and found the section he had described. The posts were indeed rotted, barely holding up the wooden rails. She pressed her weight against them experimentally, and the whole section tilted inward with a groan. A harder shove, and it fell flat with a splash into the muddy ground. Kerra crossed into Aldermere, into human lands, into the unknown. The irrigation ditch was exactly where he had said it would be, a depression in the earth that ran alongside tilled fields. She kept low and moved quickly, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The rain helped, providing cover and washing away her tracks almost as soon as she made them. The barn appeared through the sheets of rain, a solid structure of dark wood with a peaked roof. The door stood slightly ajar and Kerra slipped inside, pulling it shut behind her. The difference was immediate. Out of the wind and rain, surrounded by the smell of hay and animals, Kerra felt her body start to shake with delayed shock. She sank down onto a pile of straw, her bundle falling from nerveless fingers. "You made it," said the man's voice from somewhere above her. Kerra looked up and saw him in the loft, spreading fresh hay. He climbed down the ladder with easy familiarity and stood a respectful distance away, giving her space. "I am Isaac Jennings," he said. "I own this farm and the land around it. You are safe here for now." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why help me? You do not know me. Your people clearly want nothing to do with orcs. You could be arrested for this." Isaac settled himself on an overturned bucket, his hands loose between his knees. "Let me tell you something about what I want versus what my people want. I spent 7 years in the king's army, fighting in the border skirmishes and the rebellion in the south. I saw enough death to last me several lifetimes. When my father died 3 years ago and left me this farm, I came home and swore I would never kill again, and never stand by while someone died if I could prevent it." He gestured around the barn. "This is not much, but it is mine. The nearest neighbor is half a mile down the road, and the village is 3 miles east. The guards rarely patrol this far out unless there is trouble. If you want shelter until you figure out where to go next, I can offer that." Kerra wrapped her arms around herself, still shivering. "Your kindness will get you killed if anyone finds out." "Then we will make sure no one finds out," Isaac said simply. He stood and moved to a chest against the wall, pulling out a thick wool blanket. He tossed it to her, and she caught it reflexively. "There is a small room at the back of the barn where I keep tools. It has a door that locks from the inside. You can sleep there tonight. In the morning we will talk about what comes next." He started toward the barn door, then paused. "What is your name?" "Kerra," she said quietly. "Kerra," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "Get some rest. You are safe here." Then he was gone, slipping out into the rain, leaving Kerra alone with a blanket and more questions than answers. She found the tool room exactly where he had described it. It was small and cramped, but it was dry and secure. She locked the door, wrapped herself in the blanket, and despite every instinct screaming that she should stay alert, exhaustion dragged her down into a deep and dreamless sleep. When she woke, pale morning light was filtering through the gaps in the walls. For a disorienting moment, Kerra could not remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back: the rejection at the border, the farmer waving her across, the impossible kindness of a stranger. She unlocked the door carefully and emerged into the main barn. 2 cows stood in their stalls, chewing hay peacefully. Chickens pecked at the ground near the door. Everything looked so normal, so mundane, that Kerra had to resist the urge to laugh hysterically. The barn door opened and Isaac entered carrying a wooden tray. When he saw her, he nodded a greeting. "I was not sure if you would still be here," he said honestly. "I thought you might decide to move on during the night." "I considered it," Kerra admitted, "but I have no idea where I would go." Isaac set the tray down on a workbench. It held 2 bowls of porridge, a hunk of bread, and 2 mugs of what smelled like tea. "You should eat," he said. "Then we can talk properly." They sat on hay bales across from each other, and Kerra ate ravenously, only realizing how hungry she was once food was in front of her. The porridge was simple but filling, sweetened with a little honey. The bread was fresh, still slightly warm. The tea was strong and herbal, chasing away the last of the cold from her bones. Isaac ate more slowly, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. When she finally slowed down, he spoke. "I need to know what your situation is," he said. "Not because I am going to turn you in, but because I need to understand what kind of danger you might be in. Are there people actively hunting you?" Kerra set down her bowl and met his eyes. They were brown, she noticed, a deep, warm brown like turned earth. "My clan cast me out 5 days ago. I showed mercy to a human child who wandered into our territory. Instead of killing him or taking him captive, I led him back to the border and let him go. Someone saw. The clan elders said I had betrayed our people and could no longer be trusted. They gave me until sunset to leave." "And you tried to cross into Aldermere," Isaac said. "I have nowhere else to go," Kerra said. "North of the Orcish lands is nothing but frozen waste. South is the ocean. East and west are more human kingdoms. I thought perhaps if I could get far enough into human territory, I could find work somewhere remote, somewhere people would not ask too many questions." Isaac was quiet for a moment, thinking. "That might have worked in another province," he said finally. "But here in the borderlands, tensions are still high from the last war. An orc traveling alone would be reported immediately, and likely killed before any questions were asked." "Then what do you suggest?" Kerra asked, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Should I walk back into the neutral zone and wait for an arrow?" "I suggest you stay here," Isaac said. Kerra stared at him. "What? This farm is more work than one person can handle," Isaac said. "I have been managing alone since my father died, but it is hard. The fields need tending, the animals need care, repairs need to be made. If you are willing to work, I can offer you shelter and food. We would need to be careful. You would need to stay out of sight when anyone comes by, but it could work." "You barely know me," Kerra protested. "Why would you take such a risk?" Isaac stood and walked to the barn door, looking out at his fields. "After my father died, I was alone for the first time in my life. The army had been brutal, but at least there I had comrades, people who understood what we were going through. Here, I had nothing but silence and work and memories. The isolation nearly drove me mad." He turned back to her. "I am not expecting anything from you except honest work. You need a place to hide and rest. I need help, and if I am being honest, the company of another person who understands what it is like to be cast out. It seems like a fair trade." Kerra wanted to argue, to point out all the ways this could go wrong, but the alternative was going back out into a world that wanted her dead. And there was something in Isaac's face, a bone-deep weariness mixed with genuine kindness that made her want to believe him. "All right," she said quietly. "I will stay. For now." The first few days were strange and tentative. Isaac showed Kerra around the farm, explaining the routines and what needed to be done. There were 2 cows to milk every morning and evening, chickens to feed and eggs to collect, a vegetable garden that needed weeding, and fields of wheat and barley that would need harvesting in another month. Kerra threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised them both. She had always been strong, even by orc standards, and the physical labor felt good after days of running and fear. Isaac worked alongside her, and she began to notice things about him. The way he always checked the animals first thing in the morning, speaking softly to the cows as he milked them. The careful precision with which he repaired tools and equipment, wasting nothing. The distant look that sometimes came over his face when he thought no one was watching, as if he were seeing ghosts in the fields. They spoke little at first, keeping conversation practical and focused on tasks. But slowly, as the days passed, they began to open up. One evening, as they sat outside the barn eating a simple dinner of bread and cheese, Kerra asked the question that had been nagging at her. "You said you were in the king's army for 7 years. Did you fight against orcs?" Isaac did not look at her, but he nodded. "Yes." "In the border skirmishes, mostly. Small raids, territory disputes. Nothing like the big wars my father's generation saw, but violent enough. And did you kill any?" Kerra kept her voice level, but her heart was pounding. "Yes," Isaac said simply. "I did my duty as a soldier. I am not proud of it, but I am not going to lie to you about it either." Kerra absorbed this, turning it over in her mind. "Does it bother you having me here, knowing what I am?" Isaac finally looked at her, and his expression was serious. "What bothers me is that I spent years thinking of orcs as the enemy, as something less than human. It made it easier to do what we were ordered to do. But then the war ended, and I came home, and I had time to think, to remember the faces, to wonder about the lives I had ended." He set down his bread, his appetite apparently gone. "When I saw you at the border, cold and alone and terrified, all I could think was that you looked like every refugee I had ever seen, human or otherwise. And I knew that if I walked away, I would be no better than the men who had turned you away. Maybe helping you does not make up for what I did in the war, but it is a start." Kerra felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the walls she had built around herself. "For what it is worth, I do not blame you for what you did as a soldier. We were all following orders, doing what we thought we had to do. The human child I saved, his name was Thomas. He was maybe 7 years old, lost and crying. My clan expected me to kill him or sell him to slavers, but when I looked at him, all I could see was a terrified child. I could not do it." "That took courage," Isaac said quietly. "Or foolishness," Kerra replied. "It cost me everything I had." "Maybe," Isaac said, "but you kept your soul. That is worth something." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. For the first time since her exile, Kerra felt something that might have been the beginning of peace. 2 weeks passed, then 3. The work fell into a rhythm that felt almost natural. Kerra learned to milk the cows, though they were skittish around her at first. She tended the garden, pulling weeds and watering the vegetables with a care that surprised her. She helped Isaac repair the fence along the north pasture, holding posts steady while he hammered them into place. In return, Isaac taught her things she had never known. How to bake bread in the outdoor oven, kneading the dough until it was just right. How to preserve vegetables for the winter in jars of brine. How to read the weather by watching the clouds and the behavior of the animals. They still had to be careful. When Isaac went to the village for supplies, Kerra hid in the barn, barely breathing until she heard him return. When neighbors stopped by, which thankfully was rare, she retreated to the tool room and locked the door. Isaac explained her away with vague mentions of hired help who preferred to keep to themselves. But in the quiet moments, when it was just the two of them working side by side, something was growing between them. Kerra caught herself watching Isaac when he was not looking, noticing the strength in his arms as he lifted sacks of grain, the concentration on his face as he mended harnesses. She found herself listening for his voice in the mornings, the quiet greeting he always offered when he entered the barn. Isaac seemed to be having his own struggle. More than once, Kerra caught him staring at her with an expression she could not quite name. When their hands accidentally touched passing tools, he would pull back quickly, as if burned. The air between them felt charged with something neither was ready to name. One afternoon in late summer, Isaac came back from the village with news. He found Kerra in the garden, harvesting tomatoes, and his face was troubled. "There are soldiers in town," he said without preamble. "A whole company, maybe 40 men. They are asking questions about strange sightings, unusual activity. Apparently there have been reports of an orc seen in the area." Kerra felt ice flood her veins. "Did they say where?" "No, just general reports. Someone thought they saw movement near the border. Another person reported missing chickens and blamed raiders. It is probably nothing specific to you, but we need to be more careful. No going outside during the day except when you are absolutely certain no one is around." Kerra nodded, her mouth dry. "How long will they be in the area? I do not know. Could be days, could be weeks. We just need to wait it out." That night, Kerra lay awake in the tool room listening to the sounds of the farm. Every creak of wood, every rustle of wind made her tense. She had been foolish to think she could stay here, to think that safety was possible. Eventually, someone would see her. Eventually, Isaac would pay the price for his kindness. She was still awake when she heard footsteps outside the tool room. There was a soft knock, and Isaac's voice came through the door. "Kerra, are you awake?" She opened the door to find him standing there in his nightshirt, a lantern in his hand. "What is wrong?" she asked. "I could not sleep," he admitted. "I kept thinking about what might happen if the soldiers find you, and I realized I need to teach you the escape routes, just in case." They spent the next hour going over plans. Isaac showed her a path through the woods behind the farm that led to the river, where a small boat was hidden. He gave her a map, crude but detailed, showing safe houses he had heard about from his army days, places where people who did not ask questions might offer shelter. He gave her coins, more than she had ever held at once, and made her promise to take them if she ever needed to run. "This is too much," Kerra protested. "I cannot take your money." "You can and you will," Isaac said firmly. "I have more saved. If something happens and you need to flee, I want to know you have options." They stood close together in the barn, the lantern light casting shadows on their faces. Kerra felt overwhelmed by his concern, by the fact that he was planning for her safety with such care. "Isaac," she said quietly, "why are you doing all of this? And do not tell me it is just because you need farm help. You could hire a human easily enough, someone who would not put you in danger." Isaac set down the lantern and met her eyes. "Do you want the honest truth, please?" He took a breath, as if steadying himself. "Because somewhere in these last few weeks, you stopped being a stranger I was helping and became someone I care about. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I find myself thinking about things I want to show you, stories I want to tell you. When I go to the village, I think about what food you might like and buy extra of it. And the thought of soldiers finding you, of you being hurt or killed, makes me feel sick." Kerra's breath caught. "Isaac, we cannot. You know we cannot." "I know," he said, and there was pain in his voice. "I know it is forbidden, that your people would hate you even more and mine would kill us both. I know it is impossible, but that does not change what I feel." Kerra wanted to tell him that she felt the same, that she had started counting the hours until she would see him again, that his smile had become the best part of her day. But the words stuck in her throat, too dangerous to speak aloud. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, just for a moment. His fingers were warm and calloused from work, and they closed gently around hers. "We should get some sleep," she said finally, releasing his hand. "Tomorrow will be a long day." Isaac nodded, picking up the lantern. "Good night, Kerra. Good night." but neither of them slept well that night. The soldiers stayed in the area for nearly 2 weeks, and it was the most stressful time since Kerra had arrived at the farm. She stayed hidden almost constantly, only coming out in the dead of night to help with essential chores. Isaac handled everything else himself, and Kerra could see the exhaustion building in him. Finally, one morning, he returned from the village with the news that the soldiers were moving on. There had been no concrete evidence of any orc presence, and they were needed elsewhere. The relief Kerra felt was overwhelming. That evening they celebrated with a better meal than usual. Isaac had brought back a chicken from the village, and Kerra roasted it with herbs from the garden. They ate outside as the sun set, and for the first time in weeks, the tension between them eased. "I was thinking," Isaac said as they finished eating, "the harvest is going to come soon. The wheat will be ready in another 2 weeks, maybe 3. It is more work than I can handle alone, even with you helping." "What do you usually do?" Kerra asked. "In past years, my father would hire day workers from the village. They would come for a week, work the harvest, get paid, and leave. But this year that is complicated." "Because of me," Kerra said. "Because of the situation," Isaac corrected. "But I have been thinking about it, and I might have a solution. There is a section of the north field that is partially hidden by trees. If we harvest that section at night, just the two of us, we can get enough to see us through the winter. The rest can be sold or traded once it is safe for you to be more visible." "You are talking about back-breaking work," Kerra said. "Harvesting in the dark for hours every night. I know, but I think we can do it if we work together." Kerra looked at him, at the determination in his face, and felt something warm spread through her chest. "Together," she repeated. "All right, let us do it." The harvest was brutal. They worked by lantern light, cutting wheat with sickles until their hands blistered and their backs screamed in protest. They bundled the sheaves and carried them to the barn, making trip after trip. Some nights they worked until dawn was threatening, then collapsed into sleep for a few hours before starting the daily chores. But there was something intimate about working side by side in the darkness. Their world narrowed to the circle of lantern light and the rhythm of their labor. They talked as they worked, sharing stories from their pasts. Kerra told him about growing up in the clan, about her mother who had died when she was young and her father who had been a warrior of some renown. She told him about learning to hunt, about the thrill of running through the forest with her clan mates, about the traditions and songs of her people. Isaac told her about his childhood on the farm, about his mother who had been gentle and kind until a fever took her when he was 12. He told her about the pressure to join the army, the things he had seen and done, the friends he had lost. He told her about the dreams that still woke him sometimes, dreams of battles and blood. One night, as they took a break to drink water and rest their aching muscles, Kerra asked him something that had been on her mind. "Do you ever regret coming back here, to the farm, I mean, after the army?" Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "I used to," he admitted. "In the first year, I felt like I had traded one kind of hell for another. At least in the army there were people around, even if we were all miserable together. Here, it was just me and the silence and the ghosts. I thought about leaving 100 times, selling the farm and going somewhere new." "What stopped you?" "Stubbornness, mostly," Isaac said with a slight smile. "This was my father's land and his father's before that. It felt like giving up on them to abandon it, and then, slowly, I started to find peace in the work. There is something healing about growing things, about caring for animals, about being part of the cycle of seasons." He looked at Kerra, his expression serious in the lantern light. "And now, I am glad I stayed, because if I had not been here, I would not have seen you at the border that day." Kerra's heart beat faster. "Isaac, I am not asking for anything," he said quickly. I just wanted you to know that. Having you here, it has made this place feel like a home again instead of just a house." Before Kerra could respond, they heard a sound in the distance, the whinny of a horse. They both froze, listening intently. It was probably nothing, just a wild horse or someone traveling the road. But they doused the lanterns immediately and crouched low in the wheat, waiting. The sound came again, closer this time, and then voices. Men's voices speaking in low tones. Kerra's blood ran cold. Isaac grabbed her hand and they moved as quietly as possible toward the tree line, leaving their tools where they had fallen. They hid in the shadows of the trees, barely breathing, as two riders appeared at the edge of the field. In the moonlight, Kerra could see they wore the uniform of the king's soldiers. They sat on their horses, surveying the field. "Looks quiet," one of them said, "but I swear I saw lights out here earlier." "Probably just a farmer checking his crops," the other replied. "You are jumping at shadows, Marcus, maybe. But the captain said to check any unusual activity. There is still that bounty on any orc sightings." Kerra's hand tightened on Isaac's. A bounty. They were not just looking randomly, they were being actively hunted. The soldiers sat there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few minutes. Finally, they turned their horses and rode away, back toward the road. Isaac and Kerra waited another hour before they dared move. When they finally crept back to the farmhouse, they did not bother trying to work more that night. They were both too shaken. In the kitchen, Isaac lit a single candle and they sat at the table. His hands were shaking slightly as he poured them each a cup of water. "A bounty," he said. "They are serious about finding you." "I have to leave," Kerra said, though the words felt like they were tearing something inside her. "I have put you in too much danger already. If they find me here, they will kill you as a traitor." "No," Isaac said firmly. "We are not having this argument again. You are staying." "Isaac, be reasonable. They are actively hunting for me. It is only a matter of time before someone sees something before they come here to search." "Then we will be more careful," Isaac insisted. "We will only work inside the barn. You will stay hidden during the day. We will make it work." "Why?" Kerra demanded, her voice rising with frustration and fear. "Why are you risking so much for me? It does not make sense, Isaac. I am nobody, just an exiled orc with nowhere to go. Let me leave before you get killed for helping me." Isaac stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You want to know why? Because I am in love with you, Kerra. I have been falling in love with you since the first week you were here, and I am terrified of it, but it is the truth. The thought of you leaving, of never seeing you again, is worse than any danger the soldiers might bring." The words hung in the air between them, enormous and undeniable. Kerra stood slowly, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "You cannot love me," she whispered. "It is impossible." "And yet I do," Isaac said. He took a step toward her, his eyes searching her face. "Tell me you do not feel the same. Tell me I am alone in this and I will never mention it again. But if there is any chance that you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then we have to acknowledge it." Kerra thought about all the moments that had led to this. The way her chest lightened when she heard his voice. The way she found excuses to stand close to him when they worked. The way she had started imagining a future here on this farm with him. The way she dreamed of his touch, his kiss, things she had no right to dream about. "I love you too," she said, and her voice broke on the words. "I have been trying so hard not to, but I do. I love you, Isaac, and it terrifies me because I know how this ends. We cannot be together. Your people will never accept it. We would be hunted forever." Isaac crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and took her hands in his. "Then we will be careful. We will keep it secret. We will stay here on the farm, away from the world. I do not need anyone's acceptance, Kerra. I just need you." Kerra looked up into his face at the earnestness there, the love shining in his eyes. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was madness, that they were courting disaster. But her heart, her treacherous heart, wanted nothing more than to believe it was possible. "Kiss me," she whispered. "Please, just once before I come to my senses and remember all the reasons we should not." Isaac cupped her face gently in his hands, his thumbs brushing against her green skin. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When their lips met, it was soft and tentative at first, then deeper as weeks of suppressed longing poured into the kiss. Kerra's hands found his shoulders, pulling him closer. She had never been kissed before, had never imagined it could feel like this, like coming home and falling and flying all at once. Isaac's arms wrapped around her, holding her like she was something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "We will figure this out," he murmured. "Somehow we will make this work." Kerra wanted to believe him. In that moment, wrapped in his arms, she let herself hope. The next few weeks were simultaneously the happiest and most terrifying of Kerra's life. During the day, they maintained the pretense of cautious distance, keeping to their routines and staying vigilant. But at night, when the world was dark and quiet, they allowed themselves to be together. They were careful, never letting their guard down completely. But in stolen moments, they learned each other. Isaac taught Kerra to read, patiently going through the alphabet and simple words by candlelight. Kerra taught Isaac some of the Orcish language, laughing at his clumsy pronunciation. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, sharing hopes and fears and dreams, and they touched, cautiously at first and then with growing confidence. Isaac would brush her hair back from her face, his fingers gentle. Kerra would rest her head on his shoulder as they sat watching the stars. They kissed often, each time feeling like a small rebellion against a world that said they could not exist together. The harvest continued, though they worked closer to the barn now, not wanting to risk being seen in the distant fields again. The physical labor was still exhausting, but the time spent together made it bearable, even enjoyable. One evening, as they bundled the last of the wheat, Isaac broached a subject Kerra had been dreading. "Winter is coming," he said. "In another month, maybe two, the weather will turn. We need to think about what happens then." "What do you mean?" Kerra asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. "I mean that winter here is harsh. Snow can pile up to the eaves of the barn. Travel becomes nearly impossible. The village will expect me to come for the winter market, to sell my surplus and buy supplies. Neighbors sometimes check on each other during bad storms." "You are asking what I will do when hiding becomes harder," Kerra said. Isaac set down his work and looked at her seriously. "I am asking what we will do, together, because I am not giving up on this on us, but we need a plan." Kerra had been thinking about this too during the long hours of work. "The barn loft," she said slowly. "If we build a false wall, create a hidden room, I could stay there during the winter. It would need to be insulated, heated somehow, but it could work." Isaac's eyes lit up. "That could work. I have extra lumber from when Father repaired the roof. We could build it to look like it had always been there, just a storage area. No one would think to look behind it." They spent the next 2 weeks building Kerra's winter quarters. They worked at night, being as quiet as possible, constructing a false wall in the loft that created a small room perhaps 8 feet by 10 feet. Isaac insulated it with straw and old blankets. They installed a small iron stove with a chimney that vented through the existing barn chimney, making it look like a single source of smoke. They furnished it simply with a bed, a chair, a small table, and shelves for Kerra's few possessions. When it was finished, Kerra stood in her hidden room and felt a complicated mix of emotions. On one hand, it was a cozy space, warm and secure. On the other, it was a constant reminder that she had to hide, that her very existence was something to be concealed. "What do you think?" Isaac asked anxiously. "I think you have given me a home when I had none," Kerra said softly. "Thank you." The first snow came in early November, light flurries that dusted the fields in white. Isaac went to the village for the winter market, selling grain and preserves, buying supplies they would need. While he was gone, Kerra stayed in her hidden room, listening to every sound, imagining soldiers kicking down the barn door. But Isaac returned safely, and he brought gifts. Warm socks knitted in the village, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy, fresh apples and a small sack of coffee, a luxury they rarely had. They sat together that evening in her hidden room, the stove keeping them warm, and Kerra felt a contentment she had never known. Winter settled in fully over the next weeks. Snow piled high, and the world became quiet and white. The daily chores continued. Animals still needed to be fed and watered, but the hectic pace of summer and harvest eased. Isaac and Kerra fell into new rhythms. In the mornings, Isaac would tend to the animals while Kerra stayed hidden. In the afternoons, they would work together on indoor tasks, mending tools, sorting seeds for spring planting, repairing harnesses. In the evenings, they would retreat to Kerra's room, and those hours became the center of their world. They talked about everything. Isaac told her about his dreams of expanding the farm, maybe getting sheep or pigs. Kerra told him about Orcish customs and traditions, things she had never thought she would share with a human. They debated philosophy and argued playfully about the best way to make stew. They read together, taking turns with the poetry book, Isaac's deep voice and Kerra's slightly accented one trading verses back and forth, and their physical relationship deepened. What had started with cautious kisses grew into something more as they learned to trust each other completely. They made love for the first time during a blizzard, the wind howling outside while they created their own warmth inside. It was tender and awkward and perfect, two people who had been alone for too long finding solace in each other. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Isaac traced patterns on Kerra's arm. "I want to marry you," he said quietly. Kerra's breath caught. "Isaac, you know that is impossible. No priest would marry us. No law would recognize it." "I do not care about priests or laws," Isaac said. "I care about you. We could do our own ceremony, just the two of us, make our own vows. It would not be legal, but it would be real." Kerra felt tears prick her eyes. "You would do that?" "Bind yourself to me with no witnesses, no recognition, nothing but our word." "My word is worth more than any legal document," Isaac said firmly. "I love you, Kerra. I want to spend my life with you. Let me make that promise official." They married themselves on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. In Kerra's hidden room, with only a single candle for light, they exchanged vows they had written themselves. Isaac promised to protect her, cherish her, stand by her no matter what came. Kerra promised to love him, support him, build a life with him despite all the obstacles. They had no rings, so they exchanged other tokens. Isaac gave Kerra a small wooden carving he had made, a bird in flight. Kerra gave Isaac a bracelet woven from leather strips and decorated with beads, made in the Orcish style. "I take you as my husband," Kerra said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I take you as my wife," Isaac replied. They sealed their vows with a kiss, and in that moment, Kerra felt like the luckiest person in the world, despite everything that made their union impossible in the eyes of both their peoples. The winter was long but peaceful. They had a few scares when neighbors stopped by during breaks in the weather, and Kerra had to retreat into absolute silence in her hidden room. But mostly, they were left alone, and they built a life together in the quiet spaces between the world's expectations. Isaac taught Kerra to cook more elaborate meals, and they experimented with recipes, sometimes creating disasters that had them both laughing. Kerra taught Isaac orcish fighting techniques, and they sparred in the barn when he needed exercise beyond the daily chores. They played simple games in the evenings, cards and dice, and Kerra discovered she was competitive in a way that delighted Isaac. But as winter began to ease toward spring, they both knew that the easy isolation could not last. With the thaw would come travelers on the roads, neighbors venturing out more frequently, more opportunities for Kerra to be discovered. One evening in late February, as they sat together planning the spring planting, Isaac brought up something that had clearly been weighing on him. "I have been thinking about the future," he said carefully, "about what we can realistically hope for." Kerra felt her stomach tighten. "Go on." "We cannot keep hiding forever," Isaac said. "Eventually something will happen. Someone will see you, or soldiers will conduct a search, or some accident will expose us. We have been lucky so far, but luck runs out." "I know," Kerra said quietly. "I think about it every day. What do you want to do?" Isaac took her hand. "There are other places in the world, Kerra. Far from here, far from the border conflicts and the prejudices. I have heard stories of port cities in the south where all kinds of people mix together, where no one cares what you are as long as you pay your bills. And there are frontier settlements even further out, past the edge of mapped lands, where people go to start over." "You are talking about leaving," Kerra said. "Selling the farm, abandoning everything you know." "I am talking about choosing a life with you over a life of hiding and fear," Isaac corrected. "This farm was my father's dream, not necessarily mine. I stayed because I did not know what else to do, but now I have something worth taking risks for." Kerra felt tears threatening. "Isaac, I cannot ask you to give up everything for me." "You are not asking, I am offering. We could sell the farm in the spring, get enough money to travel, start fresh somewhere new, somewhere we could actually have a life together." It was tempting, so tempting that Kerra ached with it. But she forced herself to think practically. Traveling would be dangerous. I would be exposed constantly. And what if these places you have heard about are just stories? What if we give up everything and find nothing but more prejudice at the end of the journey? "Then at least we would have tried," Isaac said. "At least we would not be living in a prison of our own making." They argued about it, not angrily but passionately, late into the night. In the end, they agreed to think on it more, to make no hasty decisions. But the seed had been planted, the possibility of something more than hiding. Spring came with a rush of green and the return of birdsong. The snow melted, revealing the fields ready for new planting. Isaac and Kerra worked together to prepare the soil, Kerra only coming out at night or in the very early morning when mist still cloaked the land. They were planting potatoes one dawn in early April when they heard horses approaching. Multiple horses, moving fast. Isaac and Kerra looked at each other in alarm. Then Kerra bolted for the barn while Isaac stayed in the field, trying to look casual. A group of soldiers crested the hill, at least a dozen of them. The captain in front held up a hand to halt them, and they spread out in a formation that made Isaac's military training recognize immediately as a search pattern. The captain rode forward alone, stopping at the edge of the field where Isaac stood. "Good morning," the captain said. His voice was curt, professional. "I am Captain Aldrich of the King's 3rd Company. We are conducting searches of all properties in this region." "Searches for what?" Isaac asked, keeping his voice level despite his racing heart. "There have been reports of orc activity in the area," Captain Aldrich said. "We have reason to believe at least one orc may have crossed the border illegally, and is hiding somewhere in this district. We are authorized to search all buildings and properties." Isaac's mind raced. Kerra was in the barn. Even if she got to the hidden room, a thorough search might find it. He needed to stall to give her time to find some way to protect her. "I have seen no orcs here," Isaac said truthfully. "This is just a small farm. I work it alone." "Nevertheless, we must search," the captain said. "It is the king's law. You will cooperate." Isaac had no choice. He watched as soldiers dismounted and began spreading out, heading for the barn, the house, the outbuildings. His heart was in his throat as they entered the barn. He could hear them moving around inside, opening doors, climbing into the loft. Please, he thought desperately. Please let her be hidden. Please do not let them find the room. The search seemed to take forever. Soldiers went through everything, poking hay with spears, checking every corner. Isaac stood frozen, waiting for the shout that would signal discovery, that would end everything. But it never came. After what felt like an eternity, the soldiers emerged from the barn empty-handed. They searched the house next, and the chicken coop, and the storage shed. They found nothing because there was nothing to find except a scared orc woman hiding in a space they did not know existed. Finally, Captain Aldrich rode back to where Isaac stood. "Your property is clear," he said, "but remain vigilant. If you see any sign of orc presence, you are required by law to report it immediately to the nearest guard post. Failure to do so is considered treason and is punishable by death. You understand?" "I understand," Isaac said, his voice remarkably steady. The captain nodded and signaled his men. They mounted up and rode off, heading to the next farm down the road. Isaac waited until they were completely out of sight before he ran to the barn. He climbed to the loft and knocked on the false wall in the pattern they had agreed upon. After a moment, the hidden door opened and Kerra emerged, her face pale and her whole body shaking. "They were right there," she whispered. "One of them was standing on the other side of this wall. I could hear him breathing." Isaac pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You are safe. They did not find you. This time," Kerra said, and her voice was hollow. "Isaac, this time we were lucky, but they are actively searching now. It is only a matter of time before our luck runs out." Isaac knew she was right. The close call had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. They could not keep living like this, one step ahead of discovery, one unlucky moment away from death or separation. That night, they made their decision. They would leave. Isaac would quietly sell the farm over the next month, claiming he wanted to try his fortune in the city. He would gather supplies for travel, horses, provisions. And then, when everything was ready, they would slip away in the night and head south, toward the coast, toward the possibility of a new life. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. They spent the next weeks planning every detail. Isaac went to the village and spoke with a land agent about selling the farm. He bought travel supplies gradually, a little at a time so as not to arouse suspicion. He traded for 2 sturdy horses and claimed he needed them for farm work. Kerra worked on preparations of her own. She practiced riding in the dead of night, getting comfortable on horseback. She made travel clothes that would cover her distinctive green skin and hide her tusks. She learned to bind her ears flat against her head under a hat. With the right clothing and at a distance, she might pass for human, at least at first glance. They planned their route carefully. South through the back roads, avoiding major towns, following the river when they could, using it as cover and navigation. Aiming for the port city of Harbridge, which Isaac had heard was cosmopolitan and accepting. From there, they could book passage on a ship, head even further away if needed. The buyer for the farm came through in mid-May, a young couple looking to start their lives together. The irony was not lost on Isaac as he finalized the sale. He sold them everything except 2 horses, basic tools, and personal items. The money was more than he had expected, enough to give them a real chance at starting over. Their last night at the farm was bittersweet. They sat together in Kerra's hidden room one final time, looking around at the space that had been their sanctuary. "I will miss this," Kerra said softly. "Strange as that is to say about a place where I had to hide." "It was ours," Isaac said. "That made it special. But where we are going, you will not have to hide anymore. We will find a place where we can just be together, openly." They left before dawn, 2 riders heading south as the sun began to paint the sky pink and gold. Isaac looked back once at the farm that had been his family's for generations. He felt a pang of loss, but when he glanced at Kerra riding beside him, her face set with determination, he knew he had made the right choice. The journey south was challenging in ways they had not fully anticipated. They stuck to small roads and avoided towns when possible, but they could not avoid people entirely. At first, Kerra's disguise worked well enough. Wrapped in layers of clothing with a wide-brimmed hat covering her features, she could pass for human at a distance, but there were close calls. At one inn where they had no choice but to stop for the night, the innkeeper looked at Kerra too closely and frowned. Isaac quickly explained that his companion had been badly burned in a fire and was sensitive about their appearance. The lie worked, but it left them both shaken. They traveled for 2 weeks, making steady progress. The landscape changed as they moved south, the rolling farmland giving way to forested hills, and then to flatter terrain as they approached the coast. They began to encounter more diversity in the people they saw, not just humans but halflings, dwarves, even a group of elves traveling in the opposite direction. "It is different here," Kerra observed one evening as they camped in a grove of trees. "More mixed. The closer we get to the coast, the more trade there is," Isaac explained. "People from all over come to the port cities. That is why I thought we might have a chance there." On the 17th day of travel, they crested a hill and saw the ocean spread out before them, a vast expanse of blue-green water that seemed to go on forever. And there, hugging the coastline, was Harbridge, a sprawling city of white stone and red roofs, with dozens of ships anchored in its harbor. They approached the city carefully, joining the flow of travelers on the main road. The guards at the gate barely glanced at them, more interested in checking for contraband than in studying faces. Kerra kept her head down and her hat low, and they passed through without incident. Inside the city, Kerra felt overwhelmed. She had never seen so many people in one place, such a variety of beings all moving with purpose through crowded streets. Humans, dwarves, elves, halflings, and others she could not name. Street vendors called out their wares. Children ran between the crowds. The smell of salt air mixed with cooking food and unwashed bodies and animal dung. Isaac navigated them to a modest inn he had heard mentioned by travelers, a place called the Anchor's Rest. The proprietor was a weathered woman who took their coin and asked no questions, showing them to a small room on the 2nd floor. Once the door was closed behind them, Kerra finally removed her hat and unwrapped the cloth from around her face. She looked at Isaac with wide eyes. "That was a city," she said, almost laughing. "A real city. I have never seen anything like it." "And this is just the beginning," Isaac said. "Tomorrow we will start looking for work, for a place to settle. Maybe we will stay here, or maybe we will book passage somewhere even more distant." "But we made it, Kerra. We are free." They spent the next week exploring Harbridge and learning its rhythms. To their surprise and relief, Kerra's appearance drew less attention here than they had feared. Orcs were rare but not unheard of in the port city, and most people seemed more concerned with their own business than with staring at strangers. Isaac found work at a warehouse near the docks, loading and unloading cargo. It was hard labor, but it paid decent wages. Kerra found work at a market stall, helping an elderly human woman sell vegetables. The woman, whose name was Marjorie, did not care that Kerra was an orc, only that she was strong enough to haul crates and honest with the money. They rented a small apartment in a quieter part of the city, 2 rooms above a bakery. It was cramped and noisy compared to the farm, but it was theirs, and they did not have to hide. Slowly, carefully, they built a new life. They made a few friends, mostly other transplants and outsiders who understood what it was like to start over in a new place. They learned the customs of the city, where to shop and eat, which areas to avoid after dark, and they continued to grow together as a couple. Here, they could walk down the street hand in hand without fear. They could share meals in public, laugh together openly. It was everything the farm had not been able to offer, despite all its quiet beauty. One evening, about 3 months after they had arrived in Harbridge, they were walking along the harbor as the sun set. The water glowed orange and pink, and ships bobbed gently at anchor. Kerra leaned against the railing, looking out at the ocean, and Isaac stood beside her. "Do you ever regret it?" Kerra asked quietly. "Leaving the farm, your home, everything you knew?" Isaac considered the question seriously before answering. "I miss it sometimes," he admitted. "I miss the quiet, the simplicity of the work, the connection to the land, but I do not regret leaving. Because every day here I wake up next to you without fear. I can hold your hand in public. I can tell people you are my wife without hiding it. That is worth more than any farm." Kerra turned to him, her eyes bright with emotion. "I love you, Isaac Jennings. I love the life we have built together. I never thought I could have this." "Neither did I," Isaac said, pulling her close. "But we fought for it, and we have it, and I will keep fighting for it every day for the rest of my life." They stayed at the harbor until full dark, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the lights of ships appear like stars on the water. Around them, the city bustled with its endless activity, a place big enough to hold 2 unlikely lovers and their impossible love. The seasons turned, summer giving way to autumn and then winter again, though the coastal winters were milder than what they had known up north. Isaac and Kerra settled deeper into their life in Harbridge. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable. More importantly, they were safe and together. Kerra excelled at the market stall, her natural strength and intelligence making her invaluable to Marjorie. The old woman came to depend on her, and when Marjorie's health began to fail in the spring, she offered to sell Kerra the business for a small sum that she could pay off over time. Kerra and Isaac discussed it, and decided to take the risk. Isaac left the warehouse work and helped Kerra run the expanded business. They brought in produce from farms outside the city, built relationships with suppliers, and slowly grew their customer base. It was hard work, but it was their own, and that made all the difference. They made true friends as well. There was Garrett, a human sailor who had traveled the world and told endless fascinating stories. There was Brenna, a dwarf woman who ran the bakery below their apartment and made the most incredible bread. There was Shale, an elf who worked as a scribe and who loved to debate philosophy with them on quiet evenings. None of their friends cared that Kerra was an orc and Isaac was human. In Harbridge, such things mattered less than character and trustworthiness. For the first time in their lives, both Kerra and Isaac felt like they could simply exist without constantly looking over their shoulders. On their 2nd anniversary of leaving the farm, Isaac surprised Kerra with a gift. It was a simple silver ring, nothing fancy, but it fit her finger perfectly. "I know we married ourselves already," Isaac said as he slipped it onto her finger. "But I wanted you to have something real, something that shows the world you are claimed and loved." Kerra looked at the ring, tears streaming down her face. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." She had a gift for him as well, a leather-bound journal in which she had been secretly writing their story. She had documented everything from the day at the border to their journey south to their new life in the city. She presented it to him shyly. "I wanted to preserve it," she explained, "so that we would never forget how we got here, how much we fought to be together. And maybe someday, if the world changes enough, others can read it and know that love like ours is possible." Isaac read through the pages, his eyes growing bright with emotion. "This is incredible, Kerra. This is our legacy." That night, they celebrated their anniversary and their secret wedding and the life they had built. They had come so far from the desperate orc woman at the border and the lonely farmer who had waved her over. They had found not just safety, but belonging. Not just survival, but joy years past, and their life in Harbridge continued to evolve. The market stall became a full shop, then expanded to a second location. Isaac proved to have a head for business, managing their finances and making smart decisions about investments. Kerra was the heart of their operation, building relationships with customers and suppliers with her straightforward honesty and fierce loyalty. They bought a small house near the ocean, a cozy place with a garden where Kerra could grow herbs and vegetables. It reminded them both of the farm, but without the fear and hiding. They filled it with comfortable furniture, books, small treasures they collected over the years. On their 5th anniversary in Harbridge, they were walking home from the shop when they heard crying coming from an alley. They found a human child, a girl maybe 6 years old, huddled against a wall. She was filthy and thin, clearly a street orphan. Kerra knelt down, speaking softly to the child. "Are you all right? Where are your parents?" "Dead," the girl said. "Fever took them last month. I have been living on the streets since." Isaac and Kerra looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. They had never discussed children, knowing that their situation was complicated enough without bringing a child into it. But looking at this scared, hungry girl, they both knew what they had to do. They took her home, fed her, bathed her, gave her a safe place to sleep. They intended it to be temporary, just until they could find her a proper home. But the girl, whose name was Lily, attached herself to them with fierce determination. And slowly, over weeks and months, Kerra and Isaac found themselves becoming parents. It was not easy. Lily had trauma from losing her parents and living on the streets. She had nightmares and trust issues. But Kerra's patient strength and Isaac's gentle kindness gradually won her over. She started to smile more, to play, to act like a child should. Legally adopting her was complicated, given that Kerra was an orc and Isaac was human, but Harbridge had progressive laws about such things. With the help of a sympathetic magistrate and testimony from their friends about their character, they were granted custody. Watching Kerra with Lily, seeing her fierce protectiveness and gentle care, made Isaac fall in love with her all over again. And Kerra saw a side of Isaac she had only glimpsed before, his nurturing nature and endless patience with a child who needed both. Lily grew up knowing she was loved, knowing that family was not about blood but about choice and commitment. She called Kerra and Isaac her parents without hesitation, and she was utterly unbothered by the fact that her mother was an orc and her father was human. To her, they were simply the people who had saved her and given her a home. On Lily's 10th birthday, they threw a party in their garden, inviting all their friends. As Isaac watched Kerra laughing with their daughter, surrounded by people who loved them both, he felt a contentment so profound it almost hurt. Garrett the sailor approached him, handing him a cup of wine. "You have built something good here, my friend," Garrett said. "A family, a business, a life. Not many people can say that." "I got lucky," Isaac said. "I happened to be at the right place at the right time, and I made the right choice." "You make it sound like chance," Garrett said. "But from what I have seen, you and Kerra have fought for every bit of this. That is not luck. That is courage and love and stubborn determination." Isaac smiled, watching as Kerra lifted Lily onto her shoulders, both of them laughing. "Maybe you are right, but I am grateful all the same." As the sun set on Lily's birthday party, turning the sky brilliant shades of orange and purple, Isaac felt Kerra's hand slip into his. Lily was running around the garden with other children, her laughter bright and carefree. "I never imagined this," Kerra said softly. "When I was standing at that border, cold and alone and terrified, I could not have imagined that this life was possible. A home, a family, acceptance. Neither could I," Isaac admitted. "When I waved you over, all I knew was that I could not leave you there to die. I had no idea it would lead to all of this." Kerra leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for waving me over. Thank you for taking that risk, for seeing me as a person and not just an orc." "Thank you for taking the risk of trusting me," Isaac replied. "For staying, for fighting alongside me to build this life. I cannot imagine my world without you in it." They stood together as the party continued around them. Two people who should never have met, who should never have fallen in love, who had built something beautiful out of impossible circumstances. The border was hundreds of miles away now, a distant memory of a different life. But neither of them would ever forget that moment when their eyes met across the fence, when a simple wave changed everything. Lily ran up to them, grabbing their hands. "Come on, you two. Brenna is about to bring out the cake." They let themselves be pulled back into the celebration, into the warmth of friends and family, into the life they had created together. And as Isaac looked at Kerra over Lily's head, her green skin glowing in the last light of the day, he knew with absolute certainty that every risk, every hardship, every moment of fear had been worth it. Their story was not the one either of them had expected to live. But it was theirs, written in love and courage and the stubborn belief that people who were supposed to be enemies could instead choose to be family. And that, Isaac thought as he watched his wife and daughter laugh together, was the greatest victory of all. The years continued to pass gently for the family in Harbridge. Lily grew from a child into a bright, compassionate young woman, inheriting Kerra's strength of character and Isaac's thoughtful nature. The business thrived, becoming a cornerstone of the market district. And Isaac and Kerra aged together, their love deepening with each passing season. When Lily turned 18, she announced her intention to become a healer, inspired by watching Brenna care for the sick in their neighborhood. Isaac and Kerra supported her wholeheartedly, helping her find an apprenticeship with a respected physician in the city. Watching their daughter set out on her own path filled them with pride and a bittersweet awareness that their little family was changing again. On a warm evening in late summer, with Lily away at her studies, Isaac and Kerra sat in their garden watching the sunset. Isaac was 52 now, his hair gone gray at the temples. Kerra was 46, her green skin showing the first fine lines of age. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the people they had been at the border all those years ago. "Do you ever think about the farm?" Kerra asked, her fingers intertwined with Isaac's. "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "I wonder who lives there now if they take care of the land the way my father did, but I do not regret leaving, not for a moment." "I think about the border sometimes," Kerra said quietly. "About how close I came to dying there, about how one person's kindness changed everything. If you had not waved me over, I would not be here, Lily would not be here, this entire life would not exist. Isaac squeezed her hand. "But I did wave you over, and you were brave enough to trust me, and we built all of this together. That is what matters." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the city settling into evening. Finally, Kerra spoke again. "I love you, Isaac Jennings. I have loved you since that first harvest when I realized you were not just helping me but choosing me, choosing us." "And I love you, Kerra Jennings," Isaac replied, using the surname she had taken when they made their union official in Harbridge's records. "You are the best choice I ever made. The bravest thing I ever did was wave you over that fence. Everything good in my life came from that moment." As the stars began to appear overhead, they remained in the garden, two people from different worlds who had found a way to exist together in this one. Their story was not epic in the traditional sense. There were no grand battles won or kingdoms saved. But they had fought for something more fundamental: the right to love who they chose, to build a family on their own terms, to exist in a world that said they should not. And in the quiet peace of their garden, with a life of love and purpose behind them and still stretching ahead, that felt like the most epic victory of all. The orc woman who had been left at the border had found her home. The farmer who had waved her over had found his heart. And together, they had found something neither had dared to hope for: a happily ever after that was entirely their own.